This is halfway between zero. Before we begin, if you enjoy stories like this, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future uploads. All right, into our next story. It's titled, The Face in My Faucet. I first noticed it in the bathroom sink, late at night, when the apartment was quiet. Water dripped from the faucet, slow and steady, but there was something wrong. The drops sounded like tiny whispers, each one slightly different, almost forming words I couldn't understand. Kay bent closer, squinting at the reflection in the still water pooled in the basin. Tate. At first, I thought it was my own face distorted in the curve of the faucet. Tate. But then it blinked. Just once, sharp and deliberate, not mine. I froze. My heartbeat thumped in my ears, louder than the dripping. The next night, it blinked twice and smiled. A small, wet curl of lips, pressed too tightly, stretching at the corners, unnaturally, turned the handle. Water flowed, normal, except the reflection stayed, grinning, waiting, its head cocked too far to the side. I reached for a towel. When I looked back, its face was closer, emerging from the faucet like it had crawled up from the drain. I stumbled back, dripping wet, watching it retreat as soon as I moved. Over the next few nights, it learned to mimic me. Every expression I made, it mirrored, but always a little wrong. Eyebrows too high, lips twisted slightly, eyes glinting too darkly, too wet. It started whispering then, not through the faucet, not through water, but inside my skull, quiet, intimate, saying things only I would know. You missed the light again. You shouldn't sleep yet. You smell different tonight. I tried to ignore it, running water, turning lights on, leaving the door open. It didn't care. Sometimes, I'd come home to find tiny wet handprints climbing the wall near the sink. Other times, the water would be gone, and I'd see faint, wet outlines of a face pressed into the countertop. I started sleeping with the bathroom door closed. The dripping continued, even when I wasn't home. I tried filming it, but the camera only captured still water, nothing else. The face had learned to hide from lenses, to wait for me alone. One night, I leaned close, whispering, "What do you want?" The reply was wet, faint, brushing the back of my neck, "To finish what you started." I didn't understand. Ka. By morning, the faucet was dry. Ka. But the mirror fogged over from my breath, and I saw it pressed against the glass. Head tilted, smiling wide, eyes glinting wet and black. Now, I never leave the bathroom without checking the sink, but sometimes, if I linger too long, I feel warm water dripping down my back, from nowhere, always following me, always waiting. This is halfway between zero. Before we begin, if you enjoy stories like this, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future uploads. All right, to our next story. It's titled The Painting That Watched Me Sleep. It hung in my bedroom, a small oil painting I'd bought at a yard sale, a simple landscape, mountains, and a lake. At first, it was harmless, just something pretty above my dresser. But then I noticed the eyes. Not human eyes, just the faint suggestion of a figure hidden in the trees, but every night, they seemed closer, sharper. I told myself it was imagination. It's the first night, I woke to a soft creak in the room, tilting my head. The figure in the painting had moved slightly. The trees leaned a fraction closer to the lake, shadows stretching wrong. I laughed quietly, telling myself it was a trick of the light. But the next morning, the floor beneath it was damp. No water spilled, no leaks, but the air smelled faintly metallic, like old blood and wet clay. I started sleeping with the lights on. Every night, the painting shifted more. The figure in the trees stretched taller, head tilting, fingers pressing against the canvas as if it were alive. Died photographing it. The photo always blurred, the figure just a dark smudge, eyes glinting too faintly to capture. Some nights, when I woke, I could see it in my bedroom mirror, leaning just out of reach of the frame. It began to imitate me, sitting, standing, tilting its head the same way I did, even stretching its limbs in ways that shouldn't have been possible. One night, I woke to hear whispers, soft, wet, like a voice pressed against the back of my neck. "You're awake," it breathed. I spun toward the painting. The figure's shadow moved independently, sliding down the canvas, pressing against the wall, curling faintly into my corner. I tried to leave the room, but the door handle was sticky, warm, almost alive. The next morning, the painting had changed again. The figure was closer to the edge, leaning outward, smiling faintly, head tilted too far. Sometimes, I could feel it brushing against my thoughts, soft and intimate, pulling fragments from my mind I hadn't even spoken aloud. I stopped sleeping in the room. I tried leaving it in place, thinking it couldn't follow, but at night, I hear faint rustling, whispering, tapping, as if it's moving around, invisible, waiting. Atisa remains, wet clay and copper, curling around the edges of the painting, around my bed, pressing into my pillow. I tell myself it's just a painting, but every night I see it shift slightly, watching me, learning me, waiting for me to sleep again. This is halfway between zero. Before we begin, if you enjoy stories like this, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future uploads. All right, into our next story. It's titled, "The Doll in My Closet." Started small, almost silly, an old porcelain doll tucked in the back of my closet. I didn't remember putting it there. At first, I laughed, thinking maybe I'd bought it years ago, forgotten. But then I noticed the smell. It's not dust, not mildew, but warm, earthy, like damp clay and faint copper. The doll's eyes seemed glossy in the dim light, unnervingly bright, reflecting shapes that weren't there. I told myself it was just my imagination, but every night the doll moved slightly, sometimes closer to the edge of the shelf, sometimes tilted, facing me just so. I started leaving the closet door cracked open, trying to watch without disturbing it. It didn't move randomly, it moved with intention. One night, I woke to soft scraping sounds, like porcelain fingernails on wood. The doll wasn't on the shelf anymore, it was kneeling on the carpet, staring at my bed. Its head tilted wrong, too far to the side, shoulders slumping unnaturally. I froze, heart hammering, thinking maybe I imagined it. But the next morning, the doll was back on the shelf, clean, untouched, but facing directly at me. Tried photographing it. The camera couldn't capture it properly. The image blurred, elongated, the eyes too glossy, as if alive. The doll began to change subtly every night. Its mouth would curve slightly, just enough to be wrong. Its hands would stretch a fraction longer, fingers bending like twigs. Sometimes I thought I saw it breathe. I tried ignoring it, leaving the closet door open, but I began hearing whispers, soft, faint, just out of comprehension, coming from behind the shelf. They mimicked me, my voice, my breathing, even the sighs I didn't notice I made in sleep. I tried locking the closet, throwing a chair in front, but the door wouldn't stay shut. It creaked open on its own, the doll waiting inside, head cocked, hands resting on the floor as if it had just crawled there. One night, I saw it move across the floor while I was in bed. slowly, carefully, tilting, stretching, like a marionette practicing human motion. It left Mark's wet streaks, almost like handprints, on the carpet leading back to the shelf. The smell came again, stronger, earthy, coppery, curling into my hair, settling on my skin. I realized it wasn't just moving, it was learning me. Learning how I walked, where I sat, where I slept, how I breathed in the dark. Sometimes, when I wake in the middle of the night, I catch it staring from the doorway, its tiny head cocked too far, eyes glinting in the faint moonlight. I whisper, "What do you want?" And I hear my own voice answer from the closet, "To be with you." Now I leave the door slightly open every night. Sometimes I hear tiny footsteps moving around the room, soft and careful. I don't look anymore. I just lie still, listening, and the doll waits, always waiting. This is halfway between zero. Before we begin, if you enjoy stories like this, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future uploads. Alright, on to our next story. It's titled "The Hands Under the Floorboards." The first night I heard them, it was soft scratching, like fingernails against old wood, directly under my bedroom floor. I froze, listening, imagining mice, maybe rats, but it didn't sound random. It had rhythm, slow and deliberate, following the beat of my own breathing. I sat on the bed, heart pounding, tracing the pattern with my eyes, half expecting a shadow to rise. Pressed my ear to the floor. The scratching stopped for a heartbeat, then came a soft thump, like a hand pressing from below. I pulled back, telling myself it was nothing, old building, creaky floorboards. But the next night, the floorboards shifted, bending slightly under my weight, like something alive was moving just beneath the surface. Atina, I could see faint outlines, wet streaks, almost like veins of wood pulsing, following my steps. I tried filming it, but the camera captured nothing, just a normal floor, unremarkable and safe looking. Mock. That was when the first hand emerged, thin, pale, glistening, pressing through the smallest gap in the floorboards, curling upward like it had been trapped for years. I tried to step back, but the hand shot up faster, gripping the edge, pulling itself free with a wet, sliding sound. I stumbled, heart racing, and the second hand followed, identical, pressing from a nearby plank. They weren't human hands. Too long, knobby, joints bent wrong, claws thin but sharp enough to tear the wood. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat, swallowed by the scratching that now surrounded me, all directions at once. The hands moved slowly, methodically, tracing lines along the carpet above, leaving wet stains and intricate patterns I couldn't recognize. I backed into the corner, watching them emerge like dancers in a grotesque choreography, fingers flexing as if they were testing me. The smell hit me then, earthy, metallic, like wet soil mixed with rusted metal. It clung to the hands, rising in tiny clouds that twisted in the air, making the room feel alive, pressing against my skin. I noticed something impossible. Where the hands pressed, shadows stretched wrong, forming faces briefly before melting back into the floor. They didn't speak, but I could feel whispers brushing against my mind, too quiet to understand, repeating fragments of my own thoughts. I tried to grab a board to block them, but the wood bent like water under my fingers, slipping through my grasp. They moved faster now. 2 hands became 4, then 6, pressing through every seam, tracing my outline in the floor. I could feel them learning, mapping me, pressing where I had touched, memorizing my shape. I ran to the door, but the doorknob twisted in my hand, warm, alive, refusing to turn. Behind me, I felt the floor flex, like a chest inhaling, the hands crawling along the underside, reaching upward for me. I dove onto the couch, lights shaking, heart hammering, watching the boards ripple like skin over bones. The hands emerged fully, slick and glistening, standing upright for a moment, forming figures just tall enough to reach my eyes. They didn't move like people, they moved wrong, joints snapping slightly, torsos folding impossibly, heads cocked unnaturally, and then they smiled. Wide, wet, without lips, showing rows of uneven, glistening teeth that pressed against thin gums. They didn't speak, but I could feel it in my skull. Hunger, curiosity, patience. I jumped back, tripping over my own feet, and they scattered, pressing themselves back onto the floor, leaving wet outlines that pulsed faintly. Now, every night, I hear scratching in random places, soft taps under the tiles, the carpet, even under the couch. Sometimes I see faint movements under the floorboards when the lights are low, like small silhouettes practicing my shape. I don't step on certain boards anymore. I don't sit in certain spots, but the hands always find me. And sometimes, when I listen very closely, I can hear them counting my breaths, waiting. This is halfway between zero. Before we begin, if you enjoy stories like this, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future uploads. Alright then, to our next story. It's titled, The Neighbor Who Knew Too Much. Started small, almost friendly knocks on my door at odd hours, soft enough to be polite, firm enough to be noticed. At first, I thought it was a new neighbor, someone curious, harmless. But soon, the knocks weren't random, they matched the rhythm of my own footsteps, my own habits. I'd walk to the kitchen, and a tap would echo 3 steps behind me. I began noticing other things. Notes slipped under my door, short phrases. You forgot your keys again. Don't leave the window open. Things I hadn't told anyone. Things no one could know. I tried to ignore it, pretending I wasn't paying attention. But the knocks came faster, taps sharper, almost mocking in precision. Then came the smells. Not normal smells, earthy, metallic, like wet clay and old blood mixed. They lingered near the door, spreading slightly when I got close, retreating when I backed away. One night, I woke to the sound of soft breathing in the hallway, right outside my door. I opened it slowly. Nothing, except the carpet had changed. It's darkened, pressed down in the shape of my own body, as if someone had laid there while I slept. I stepped back. The pressure left, the carpet returning to normal, but a faint outline remained, warm underfoot. The next day, I found a letter slipped under the door. I've watched everything you do. Don't be scared. Yet. I laughed nervously. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it wasn't. That night, the knocking moved to inside my walls. Soft, rhythmic, echoing from corners I didn't know existed. Sometimes I could hear it in the ceiling above my head, but sometimes under the floorboards, always following me, always matching my movements. But I tried leaving, walking fast, staying with friends, but the noises followed me home, inside the apartment, inside the walls. One evening, I saw my neighbor, or someone who looked like them, pressed against the wall. Face pale, eyes too large, staring through the plaster. I blinked, and it disappeared, but the faint outline remained, stretching along the hallway, a shadow of what had been. The taps became whispers. Names, thoughts, things only I could know, spoken softly, brushing against my skull like wet fingertips. The carpet shapes began moving. At night, they would shift, rising slowly, forming bodies that mimicked my own. Lee started sleeping in the kitchen, lights low, listening. Lee. The shapes didn't care. They circled the apartment, patient, learning, practicing. I whispered, "Why are you doing this?" The answer came as a soft thump against my chest, a wet brush along my skin, a voice in my mind. "We're learning you." I realized then, it wasn't just my neighbor, it was me. Somehow, it was copying everything, learning every motion, every thought, every private habit. Now, when I walk through my apartment, I hear footsteps that aren't mine. Sometimes, I catch glimpses in mirrors, in windows. Even in the dark corners, figures moving in perfect imitation, hands dangling too long, bodies stretched slightly wrong. Atina, I try to tell myself it's harmless, but the outline on the carpet waits for me, always. And sometimes, when I glance over my shoulder, I see it standing there, smiling politely, as if it has been expecting me all along.